So Xbox has exclusives. Obviously, they announced at the showcase last week that console exclusives are making a return. And today I'm going to talk about what I think the next steps need to be for Asher's team and where the next console that they're working on behind the scenes needs to go. The first thing I want to talk about is Project Helix. We obviously know that the next piece of hardware has a code name of Project Helix, and we don't know a lot of things about Project Helix, but what we do know is that number one, it was devised during Phil and Sarah's tenure at Xbox. So the console itself, the premise of the console was imagined whilst they had quite different brand views of what Xbox should be and where Xbox should be going. It was originally intended to be like a premium device. So Sarah said in a video that the Helix was intended to be a premium device, and that kind of rang alarm bells with a lot of people because obviously there is like the memory shortage and prices of hardware and stuff are skyrocketing at the minute. And I've heard people say that the next Xbox console could potentially be over £1,000, which is just crazy when you think that the Series X launched at 449. And the third most important thing that we know about Project Helix is that it's supposedly going to play both Xbox and PC games. Now, the first thing I would do, and I don't think it's like absolutely impossible that this conversation isn't happening within Xbox right now. The first thing that I would do is take a different direction with Project Helix. I would essentially scrap it. There's obviously some elements of it that you would keep, like the internal hardware and stuff like that. That's, probably going to be the same regardless. But I think it needs to be more of a traditional console. I think they need to be meeting Sony where they're at with the PS6, whatever that will look like. And I personally just don't think it needs to be able to play PC games. We've got the Steam machine coming out. Now, the caveat with that is that I am not a PC gamer. My Steam library probably has less than 5 games in it. So I'm not that audience. I'm sure that there are some people watching, and I've spoken to people online before who've said that one of their main reasons to be sort of keeping an eye on what the Project Helix becomes is the fact that it will play their PC games as well. And I get that, but I think that personally, I would get rid of that part of the project. I think if it increases the price or it makes it more complicated, I just don't think it needs it. Focus on console first. This is something that Asher has said herself, and I would come up with a traditional console, just a step up from the Series X, really. I mean, the Series X, I think as a piece of hardware, is really good. I think what's let them down this generation is obviously leadership and obviously brand direction, but also software as well. But I think like the Series X I think the Series X looks better than the PS5. If you're interested in this video, if you're enjoying this video, you want to see other videos like this, please do subscribe. Obviously, I've uploaded a couple of videos over the last week talking about various opinions and various thoughts on the games industry. There's going to be more to come. So if you're interested, please do subscribe. I would appreciate it. So I looked at the prices of the various Xboxes right from the original Xbox right up until the Series X and what that would be in today's money. The average price in today's money of what the consoles would be was £549.99. Which equals $736. So I think like they're well within their right to look at around that sort of price for the Project Helix. I think that's what they need to aim for. I also think like I've seen other people say, and I think it's a very good point, that potentially next generation will go to a more like phones, like where you pay almost like a subscription, but I guess it's like a finance agreement where rather than saying the cost of the next console is £1,000 or $1,000, it's equivalent to whatever it would be a month for 24 months. Realistically, the next consoles, both PlayStation and Xbox, they're gonna be digital, you would imagine. Like, I would be really surprised if they came out of the box with a disc drive. Obviously, like Sony with the PS5 Slim and the Pro, they've got like that add-on disc drive, which they may do something like that next gen. But I personally think, and I don't know. I don't know how logistically possible this would be. But what I wrote down when I was thinking about what needs to be done next, is that you offer people a digital version of what they have on disc. I don't know how it would work. I don't know whether they would somehow, like, is there a code or something on a disc that they could type in on the Microsoft website and it gives them the digital version of that game? Something like that. I thought that would go a long way to really appealing to gamers, especially people that don't want to lose their library of physical games if the next console was fully digital. Another easy win for Asher would be, and I've seen this on the thing where they've asked people to submit what they think, the player feedback survey thing, is to make multiplayer free. That's obviously something that's on PC, but it's not on consoles. And I know that people feel quite strongly about it. I think that's an easy win. I've said don't worry about when the PS6 is going to release. I think obviously right now, Xbox, I think in hindsight, shot themselves in the foot this generation for many reasons. But the reason I'm talking about right now is the fact that they didn't release a mid-gen console, a mid-gen like Pro console, basically a competitor to the PS5 Pro. I have a PS5 Pro. I also have a Series X. But right now, all of the games that I want to play, I would play on, if they're on PS5 Pro, I would get them on PS5 Pro because that's the better experience. For example, GTA, that's obviously where I'm going to buy GTA because it's the better experience. So I think they've obviously kind of shot themselves in the foot with that. So I would argue, like, maybe don't worry too much about when the PS6 is releasing. If they can release the new Xbox a year before, as long as the PS6 doesn't come out and immediately better it, then I think maybe that's the way to go. Because right now, people like me with the mentality where I've got both consoles, as I say, the PS5 Pro is undoubtedly the better place to play. So why would you not play on that? The final thing on hardware that I wanted to speak about, and again, I think people will have differing opinions on this, is, in my opinion, the Xbox controller needs improving. The fact that it is essentially the same controller that we had with the Xbox One, I think to get this far into the generation without an improvement, I think it is just not on from Xbox. I think what's funny is that I remember seeing relatively soon after the Series X came out, I remember there was an internal email that was leaked where Phil was saying that he was a big fan of what PlayStation had done with the DualSense. And I mirror that. Like, the DualSense, in my opinion, the DualSense is miles better than the Series X controller. I know people like the ergonomics of the Xbox controller, but the adaptive triggers in particular on the PS5, games like Battlefield 6, which I've played on both consoles, it's just so much of a better experience on PlayStation. And I remember Phil saying that he really liked the PS5 controllers, and I remember there being an email that was leaked about him saying, we should try and do something similar. And then a couple of years ago, with the whole Activision merger, there was again leaked stuff to do with there being a new controller, and we still haven't seen it. And I think right now, it's unlikely that we would see a significant change to the Series X controller this close to the next generation. So I think they have to focus next generation. They need adaptive triggers. That is just something, technology that Sony came up with that is significantly better. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is strategy. And this is more from like a branding perspective, which is something that they've massively dropped the ball on over the last, realistically, since Don Matrick. The first thing I've written down is more exclusive games. We know that this is coming. They've said that at least a couple of games every year will be console exclusive. I think they need to lean into this more, if I'm honest. I think if a game is predominantly single player, it should be exclusive. That should be the way that they work it out. Forza Horizon 6 should have been exclusive, in my opinion. Fable should be exclusive, in my opinion. And again, I'm kind of console agnostic. I have a PlayStation, but, I'm a big Xbox fan, so that's what I think about exclusives. The console, when they launch it, it needs a strong launch lineup. It needs to have a game that is a cultural moment that people will talk about at school or people will talk about at work. Something along the lines of a Forza Horizon 6 or a Gears of War or a Fable. Maybe, I don't even know if a Halo is a cultural moment anymore, but games like that, games that will get an 8, 9, 10 by by reviewers, that's the type of game that they need to launch with. It needs to be something strong. They need to make deals with third-party games. Think basically everything that PlayStation have done since the PS4, particularly in the PS4 generation, but they've done it a little bit this generation as well. Like exclusive missions in games, bundles that are exclusive to the platform, like COD bundles, early access to betas. The fact that before Xbox bought Activision, COD used to have a whole week of beta access on PlayStation before Xbox. They need to lean into stuff like that. Something else I would add that I haven't actually written down is software. I think one of the strongest additions to this generation, and something that I think is crazy that PlayStation don't have yet, similarly to like the whole controller thing, is Quick Resume. Quick Resume is by far one of the best additions that they brought in with this generation. But I think on a software level, they need to change up the dashboard. The same way as the controller, it's essentially the same dashboard as we had on the Xbox One, which I just think they need to think of generations as a little bit more separate, because it felt a little bit like getting like a new iPhone and it's the same iOS. Do you know what I mean? Where it needs to feel a bit different. So I think a major redesign to the UI. There's lots of good examples, fan examples that I've seen on Reddit and things like that, of really good console dashboards that are sort of reminiscent to the 360 or reminiscent to the original. I think they could do a lot of work on that, personally. Get rid of the ads. I know that's a popular opinion. Get rid of the ads off the home screen. I personally really like the PS5 UI. I think do something similar to that. The final thing I would say is that they need to lean into what people fondly remember about the original Xbox and about 360. This is something that they've already started doing. The new Xbox logo is very reminiscent of the original Xbox. They had that poster for the showcase last week that was very reminiscent of the original Xbox. Asher has talked about bringing the blades back for the dashboard and stuff like that. I think it shouldn't be like just a nostalgia play, because I think that is like a bit cheap, but it works. To an extent, it works. They need to lean into that nostalgia. And they need to try and make people think, yeah, Xbox is back to where it was with the 360 generation. So I personally think that the next Xbox console should be called, and I'm not the first person to say this, the Xbox 720. It's something that is very reminiscent of the 360. It was rumoured to be the next Xbox after the 360. I think that's what like the fans were calling it before it was announced as the Xbox One. And I think they need to lean into that. I think have the logo be, very reminiscent of the 360, of the OG Xbox. That genuinely, I think, would go a long way to showing people and making people think, okay, Xbox, like, they are trying to get back to their roots, which I think they already are, and I think they're already doing a pretty good job of it. I think that if Xbox can do 75% even of the stuff that I've just mentioned, I think that will go a long way to appealing to fans and appealing to gamers like me. But I'm aware that some of those opinions are probably unpopular. So please do comment down below if you have a different opinion, if you disagree, or if you agree, or if you think I've missed something out. Please comment below. I genuinely will be interested to hear what you think.